For decades, the global public has lived in a state of worship for the monuments of Hollywood's golden age, treating its legends as untouchable icons carved from moral perfection, believing the glow of the silver screen reflected the purity of the souls behind it. But that velvet curtain was violently torn apart by an old interview with Jack Elam, a man who spent his life observing Hollywood from its darkest corners, standing quietly on film sets, watching everything unfold while the cameras were not rolling. And in that interview, Elam exposed a truth so disturbing that it shattered decades of illusion, revealing that many of the figures once praised as symbols of justice and honor were hiding demonic faces behind carefully constructed images. Men who openly loathed people of color, some even stating they would rather die than work alongside them. And worse still, Elam spoke of sinister plots involving intentionally staged accidents, calculated humiliation, and the weaponization of power to destroy the livelihoods of anyone who did not possess what they believed was superior skin, forcing us to ask which so-called righteous stars were actually villains operating in the shadows. Because when these resentful revelations are peeled back layer by layer, the final truths are nothing short of shocking. Clint Eastwood was seen by fans as the embodiment of rugged romanticism and masculine strength, immortalized through classic Western films where he appeared disciplined, controlled, and flawlessly professional, with the press showering him in praise for his appearance and his ability to mold stories into what were described as humanitarian masterpieces. Yet behind the myth of the man with no name lay deeply disturbing secrets. Because according to Jack Elam, Eastwood was a bully who openly targeted indigenous people on set, frequently giving stuntmen and staff from ethnic minorities a brutal time, subjecting them to degrading gestures and cruel remarks, ordering them to be removed as if they were worthless obstacles. And during one particularly horrifying incident, Eastwood forced a Native American actor to stand under the blazing sun for 8 straight hours simply to assert dominance, ignoring his visible suffering until the exhausted actor finally begged for mercy, only to be met with a cold smirk and a declaration that this was his movie and anyone who didn't like it could leave, a pattern of cruelty that extended into Eastwood's obsession with speed and efficiency, where he turned sets into sweatshops, pushing indigenous actors to work day and night in extreme heat while he sat comfortably in the shade, later dragging them into freezing night shoots without rest, mocking their suffering, threatening replacement, and driving many to quit despite losing life, changing opportunities, all because they could no longer endure working under a man who looked down on them as lesser beings. John Wayne, long celebrated as the living symbol of America and idolized as the ultimate Western hero, projected an image of moral certainty and patriotic strength that caused millions around the world to worship him as a saint. Yet according to Jack Elam, Wayne's true self was a hypocrite steeped in openly racist ideology, something he did not even attempt to hide, as proven when he publicly declared his belief in white supremacy in a shocking interview, a worldview that exploded into public outrage during the Academy Awards when a Native American woman took the stage on behalf of Marlon Brando to protest Hollywood's treatment of indigenous people, sending Wayne into such a violent rage that multiple security guards were required to restrain him as he screamed for hours backstage, after which he attacked Brando publicly, dismissing him as immature and accusing him of hiding behind a Native woman, while privately attempting to sabotage Brando's career by urging producers to boycott him, labeling him a poisonous influence, all while opposing films that portrayed people of color as victims, using his influence to blacklist sympathetic directors and aggressively defend what he believed was the traditional American order built on exclusion and dominance. Charlton Heston stood as one of cinema's most sacred faces, revered for portraying great men and immortalized as Moses leading people to freedom, an image that became synonymous with righteousness and moral authority. Yet behind that robe of holiness was a man described by Jack Elam as possessing a warped messiah complex, someone who openly expressed supremacist beliefs at elite gatherings, claiming certain people were unenlightened souls who needed to be saved and controlled by white order. Growing resentful when people of color rejected his so-called guidance, refusing to even stand near background actors of color unless filming demanded it, and extending his extremism into political influence by opposing civil rights movements, viewing them as threats to social stability, and allegedly using his power to quietly block the advancement of talented actors of color out of fear that equality would dismantle the hierarchy he believed in, leaving behind the tragic irony of a man who portrayed freedom on screen while working to suppress it in reality. Lee Marvin was revered as the ultimate embodiment of masculinity, a war-hardened Marine-turned-actor whose gritty presence convinced audiences they were watching a man who understood sacrifice and honor. Yet according to Jack Elam, Marvin's heroic image was a carefully maintained cover for a soul consumed by hatred, particularly toward Asian actors, as he routinely used slurs, threats, and intimidation to dominate sets, screaming insults inches from colleagues' faces while reeking of alcohol, dismissing their humanity by declaring they had no souls and referring to them as walking corpses. And his violence extended beyond words as he deliberately ignored safety protocols, striking co-stars during combat scenes, sending people to hospitals, and terrifying entire crews with drunken outbursts where he relived war memories and ordered people of color to leave, leaving behind a legacy where his on-screen glory was stained by the suffering of those he humiliated and abused. Clint Walker was hailed as America's gentlest hero, admired for his towering presence and calm demeanor, celebrated as a symbol of kindness and moral strength through his television roles. Yet Jack Elam revealed that this gentleness was little more than a performance, as Walker showed quiet but unmistakable contempt for Mexican stunt teams and supporting actors, referring to them with degrading language, refusing to interact with them, deliberately stalling work while they waited under the scorching sun, savoring the power imbalance until resentment boiled over, leading those same stuntmen to subtly sabotage scenes by loosening equipment and manipulating horses, driving Walker into furious outbursts that exposed the rage beneath his carefully crafted image, revealing a man who lived a double life as both a public symbol of kindness and a private believer in segregation.